The Johnson family lived a peaceful life in a cozy home in the suburbs of a small American town. John, the father, worked as a civil engineer, spending most of his time at the office but always making time for important family events. Mary, the mother, was an elementary school teacher, known for her patience and kindness both at home and at school. Emily, 15, was a curious and intelligent teenager with a passion for horror stories and mysteries. Timmy, the youngest at 8, was an energetic boy, always up for adventures and mischief. Mornings in the Johnson household were always bustling. John would leave early for work, a cup of coffee in hand and a quick kiss for Mary and the kids. Mary would prepare breakfast and pack the children's lunches, while Emily helped Timmy get ready for school. After school, Mary would return home, where she divided her time between grading papers and taking care of the house. Emily spent her afternoons reading or exploring the internet in search of new stories and mysterious theories. Timmy loved playing in the backyard with his dog, Max, a loyal and playful golden retriever. One afternoon after school, the Johnson family received an unexpected package. It was a large box, carefully wrapped, with a letter attached. The letter read, "Dear Johnson family, I hope this gift finds you all well. This mirror belonged to our great-aunt Margaret, who recently passed away. She always spoke of this mirror as one of her most cherished possessions. Although we don't know much about its history, we thought it would be better with family. Warmly, the Thompson family." Along with the mirror, there were small gifts for everyone. John received a silver pen engraved with his initials, Mary got a vintage cookbook, Emily found a delicate necklace with a key-shaped pendant, and Timmy was thrilled with a vintage toy car. Emily was the first to notice something strange about the mirror. It had an ornate frame, with intricate details that seemed to tell a story of its own. When she looked into it, sometimes it seemed like the reflection wasn't quite right. Slight distortions, shadows that moved in an unusual way, but nothing she could prove was wrong. One night, while brushing her hair in front of the mirror, she noticed a shadow darting past behind her. She turned around immediately but saw nothing. Thinking she was tired or that it was just her imagination, she decided not to mention it to her family. As days passed, other family members began to notice small peculiarities, but no one mentioned anything, thinking they were just coincidences or tricks of the mind. The mirror, though beautiful, began to bring a sense of unease to the Johnson house, a foreshadowing of something sinister to come. From the moment the mirror was placed in the living room, inexplicable things began to occur in the Johnson household. First, there were the sounds, soft footsteps on the wooden floor, indistinct whispers at night, and occasionally a faint scratching on the walls. Initially, the family thought it might be Max, the dog, making noise, but they quickly realized the sounds were coming from places where the dog couldn't be. Then, objects began to move on their own. Glasses of water left on the kitchen table would be found in different places in the morning. Books that Mary meticulously organized on her bookshelf would appear out of order or open to specific pages. One night, John saw the dining room chairs slightly out of place, as if someone had pulled them and then pushed them back, but no one in the house had done so. Intrigued by the strange events, Emily began to pay closer attention. She noticed that the phenomena seemed more intense at night and always near the mirror. Curious and determined, Emily started keeping a journal of the occurrences, searching for patterns. After a few days of observation, she realized that everything seemed to have started right after receiving the gifts. Emily decided to investigate further. While browsing the internet, she found stories about cursed objects and supernatural phenomena. One article caught her eye. It talked about ancient mirrors that served as portals for spirits and evil entities. Continuing her research, she found mentions of a specific mirror that had caused a series of tragic events in various families over the centuries. The mirror in her house fit the description, an ornate frame with symbols that she now recognized as ancient runes. According to the legend, the mirror had belonged to a powerful witch in the 17th century who had cursed it before being burned at the stake. As Emily delved deeper into her research, Timmy began to see frightening figures in the mirror. He reported seeing people with distorted faces and empty eyes staring at him from the other side of the glass. Initially, Mary and John thought these were just nightmares or their son's fertile imagination, but Timmy's descriptions were disturbingly detailed. One night, Timmy woke up screaming, saying that one of the figures had come out of the mirror and tried to pull him in. Mary rushed to comfort him, while John checked the mirror. There was nothing visible, but a sense of something sinister hung in the air. Emily, determined to protect her family, tried to convince her parents that the mirror was the source of the problems. Still skeptical, John and Mary attributed the events to coincidences and the children's imaginations. But Emily knew there was more at stake and decided she needed to discover the truth before it was too late. The unease grew in the Johnson household, and the mirror, though seemingly harmless, began to show its true nature, bringing to the surface the horrors that were imprisoned within it. Emily spent countless nights scouring online libraries, occult forums, and historical archives in search of information about the mirror. Finally, she found an old diary belonging to a local historian who documented supernatural events in the region. In its yellowed pages, she read about Elizabeth Hathaway, a witch condemned to death in the 17th century. Before being burned at the stake, Elizabeth cursed a mirror, vowing it would become a portal for her revenge. The diary described how the mirror had passed from generation to generation, bringing misfortune and death to those who possessed it. In each account, Elizabeth's presence manifested in increasingly aggressive ways, culminating in inexplicable tragedies. Emily felt a shiver run down her spine as she realized that the mirror in her living room was the same one described in the diary's pages. While Emily was unraveling the mirror's dark history, Mary began having horrific nightmares. In her dreams, she was chased by a female figure with fiery eyes and a sinister smile. She would wake up sweating, screaming, but the nightmares were so vivid that she felt like she was still trapped in them even after waking up. Each night, the dreams became more intense until Mary began to dread sleep. John, in turn, had a terrifying experience while shaving. Looking into the mirror, he noticed that his reflection was not synchronized with his movements. The reflection smirked maliciously and began to mimic actions that John wasn't doing. Terrified, John took a step back, and the reflection remained where it was, laughing silently. John collapsed to the bathroom floor, trembling, unable to look away from the mirror. The supernatural events within the Johnson household intensified alarmingly. The shadows became denser and more tangible, taking on grotesque shapes that crawled along the walls and ceiling. Objects flew across the room, hurled with force by invisible hands. Light bulbs flickered and exploded, plunging the house into complete darkness. Timmy, the most vulnerable, began to be physically attacked by these unseen forces. Unexplained scratches and bruises appeared on his body, and he would wake up crying, saying that the mirror woman was trying to hurt him. The terror in Timmy's eyes broke Emily's heart, and she felt the pressure to save her family increasing every day. Mary and John, now convinced that something terrible was happening, joined Emily in her research. Together, they spent hours studying the diary and trying to understand how they could get rid of the mirror. The tension in the house was palpable, and each member of the family was on the verge of a nervous breakdown. One night, as they were gathered in the living room, a cold wind swept through the house, causing doors and windows to slam violently. The shadows on the walls moved as if they were alive, and a whispering voice echoed through the house, promising pain and suffering. The mirror, at the center of it all, seemed to pulsate with an evil energy, reflecting not just the room but visions of fire and destruction. Desperate and with time running out, the family knew they had to act quickly to break the curse before it was too late. The weight of discovery and the growing terror united the Johnsons in a desperate struggle against the evil forces that inhabited the mirror. Terror had taken over the Johnson household. Nights were dominated by screams, shadows, and a constant presence of evil. Determined to get rid of the mirror, the family tried everything. They threw it in the trash, buried it in the backyard, and even tossed it into a distant river. But in an inexplicable and terrifying manner, the mirror always returned to the house, reappearing in the same spot, its ornate frame gleaming sinisterly. Each time the mirror reappeared, the sense of despair deepened. Emily started losing weight and developing deep dark circles under her eyes from sleepless nights trying to understand the mystery. Mary, always the rock of the family, began to cry silently in moments of solitude. John, normally calm and rational, had become a nervous and irritable man, tormented by a sense of helplessness. Timmy, already traumatized, avoided the living room, where the mirror resided, and barely spoke. Emily knew they needed outside help. With great effort, she convinced her parents to seek out an occult specialist. After several searches, they found Dr. Samuel Weaver, a scholar of supernatural phenomena who had a reputation for solving impossible cases. When Dr. Weaver entered the Johnson house, he immediately felt the negative energy. Examining the mirror, he confirmed Emily's worst fears: the mirror was indeed cursed by the witch Elizabeth Hathaway. He explained that the only way to break the curse was to perform a specific ritual, a dangerous process that required the participation of the entire family. Under Dr. Weaver's guidance, the family began to prepare for the ritual. They would need rare ingredients and symbolic objects, many of which were difficult to find. Each step of the process increased the tension and fear. Every day, the supernatural attacks became more violent, as if the entity knew they were trying to get rid of it. During the preparation, the Johnson house transformed into a battleground. Mary was attacked by an invisible force that pushed her down the stairs, leaving her with several bruises. John was nearly strangled by an electrical cord that seemed to come alive. Timmy developed high fevers and spoke in unknown tongues, while Emily was haunted by visions of Elizabeth, laughing and promising revenge. The peak of despair occurred the night before the ritual. The family was gathered in the living room, surrounded by the necessary items, when a wave of dark energy swept through the house. The lights flickered and went out, and the mirror began to glow intensely. The shadows became solid, attacking the family with sharp claws and flaming eyes. Max, the dog, barked frantically, trying to protect Timmy. With a combined effort, the family managed to temporarily ward off the shadows, but they were all exhausted and injured. Feeling the weight of responsibility, Emily looked at her parents and brother, seeing in their eyes the same determination mixed with fear. They knew the only way to save themselves was to move forward with the ritual, despite the risks. Dawn was about to break, and with it, the decisive moment was approaching. The tension was palpable, and the air was charged with a sense of impending catastrophe. The Johnson family, united by despair and love, prepared to face the final and most dangerous stage of their battle against the curse that threatened to destroy them. Night fell, enveloping the Johnson house in oppressive darkness, broken only by the candles that circled the mirror. Dr. Weaver guided each step, while the family, exhausted and nervous, followed his instructions. Mary held Timmy's hands tightly, trying to comfort him, as John fixed his gaze on the mirror, determined to protect his family. The ritual began with a series of chants in Latin, each word charged with power and hope. As the words resonated through the house, the temperature dropped dramatically, and the air seemed to vibrate with a sinister energy. The mirror began to glow with a cold, blue light, and the reflection of the candles flickered as if distorted by an invisible force. Suddenly, a gust of wind swept through the room, extinguishing all the candles. The shadows became denser and began to move menacingly. The spirit of the witch Elizabeth Hathaway began to manifest, her ghostly figure emerging from the mirror with flaming eyes and a cruel smile. At the climax of the ritual, Elizabeth let out a deafening scream and reached out towards Emily. Before anyone could react, Emily's soul was pulled into the mirror. The family watched in horror as Emily disappeared, leaving her body limp on the floor. Inside the mirror, Emily found herself in a supernatural plane, a place of darkness and fire. Elizabeth was there, more powerful and menacing than ever. Emily felt the weight of fear but also the determination to protect her family. Outside, John, Mary, and Timmy were in panic. Dr. Weaver instructed them to continue the prayers and chants, reinforcing the barrier against the mirror's evil power. With tears in their eyes, Mary and Timmy recited the prayers with fervor, while John repeated the words in a trembling but determined voice. Inside the mirror, Emily and Elizabeth engaged in an intense battle. The witch used all her power to subdue Emily, casting horrific visions and violent attacks. But Emily, fueled by the strength of her family and the love she felt for them, found an indomitable courage. Using a fragment of an ancient rune she had found in her research, she struck a blow against Elizabeth's spirit, weakening her. With a cry of rage and pain, Elizabeth dissipated into a cloud of ashes, her curse finally broken. The mirror, now devoid of the witch's presence, began to crack and shatter from the inside out. Emily was thrown back into the real world, waking up in her mother's arms, while John held her hands tightly and Timmy cried with relief. The mirror exploded into 1,000 pieces, each fragment glowing and disintegrating until it disappeared completely. A sense of relief and peace filled the house, as if a giant weight had been lifted from the family's shoulders. In the days that followed, the Johnson family tried to return to normalcy. Nights were once again peaceful, without shadows or whispers. Emily, Mary, John, and Timmy carried the scars of the terror they had faced, but their family bond had grown even stronger. Although the traumas were deep, the family found ways to cope with the memories. Mary returned to her hobbies, cooking new recipes from the book she had received. John dedicated himself more to his family, cherishing every moment with them. Emily turned to writing, narrating her experiences in a diary, while Timmy began to sleep without fear, holding tightly a new toy his parents had given him as a symbol of a new beginning. Despite the attempt to move on, the fear that one day everything could happen again still lingered in the air, a faint shadow of uncertainty. But together, the Johnsons would face any adversity that came their way, knowing that love and courage are the greatest forces against any evil.